In the program Current Affairs, now we bring you a discussion on NDMA's role in disaster mitigation. The participants are M. Sasidhar Reddy, Vice Chairman, National Disaster Management Authority, George Matthew, Chairman, Institute of Social Sciences, and Chetan Chauhan, Associate Editor, Hindustan Times, who initiates and moderates the discussion.
Good evening, listeners. We would be discussing about disaster management in India. Dr. Reddy, you are Chairman of the authority and the NDMA Act came in 2005. Can you tell us in the 5 years how much India has prepared itself to manage disasters of different scopes?
Well, today we've observed the 9th formation day of the Disaster Management Authority. It's an authority that is headed by the Prime Minister, and I think a recent report that came out from the UN, I came to know about only this morning when we had this function. The country head for the UN was there and she was talking about it. They have come up with a publication which talks about a lot of rapid strides made in the field of disaster management in different countries, and they had a list of 5 countries and India heads that list. So I'm very happy that this is how the manner in which disaster management is going in India. When the Act came into effect, the main purpose was to bring about a change in the thinking, not just think of rescue and relief, but look at all aspects of disaster management. We have made considerable progress, but a long way to go.
As Dr. Reddy said, it's a long way to go. Mr. Matthews, what do you think at the ground level? Which are the areas in which the authority or the state disaster management authorities can do more to create sort of awareness so that the impact of any natural disaster is minimized?
See, we are living in a era. Science, technology, information, everything is available. The question is, are we properly utilizing this? And many situations there can be a forecast about it, what I call early warning. And my question is the government really doing that early warning to the citizens of this country? And that citizen means remote villages, rural areas. And are they aware of the possibilities this may happen, these situations can emerge? In my view, that awareness building at the ground level is not happening. It can happen from the Gram Sabha onwards, upwards, from the primary school upwards. Is it really happening?
Mr. Matthews has raised an important issue because disaster management is all about saving people first, then the property maybe. But as we saw in Uttarakhand, the ground level disaster management was found to be inadequate. And across different states, in cities, there's a lot of focus on disaster management. But when it comes to rural areas, which in most of the cases disasters are impacted adversely, the awareness and the training is not there. So how do you, NDMA, plan to create sort of training at the ground level, create awareness at the ground level? For different type of disasters, people can know what they have to do, what is the drill they have to undertake.
Well, what happened in Uttarakhand, I think, is totally unprecedented. Any amount of early warning could not have really saved the situation. Because if you look at the magnitude, the volume of water, all of a sudden about 10 meters of water comes. No amount of early warning can do anything in a situation like this. We did discuss this several times. And any early warning, what are people asked to do? To go to safer places. It's a hilly area, narrow roads, hardly able to pass through that. And then when they're at one place, they remain there, and some of these places got totally wiped out. So this is one aspect. This is an extreme case. But I think I totally agree. We have developed a lot of early warning capabilities. It's improving over the years. And we have developed a tsunami early warning center. In 2004, 16,000 people died. And I can say it with authority that should there be a tsunami again, hardly anybody will die. That is the kind of early warning capability that we have.
But we normally learn after a disaster.
It is also inevitable. When we started, people I looked at a report again from the UN, which said that in 2004 when the tsunami happened, 85% of journalists world over were not aware what a tsunami was. So in India, people started talking about it. What is tsunami? They have never heard of it. Yet people died.
Right.
Then we started looking for it. Now what happened in Uttarakhand or wherever, there are instances where science and technology has been leveraged in such a manner. In 2009, we had a very severe flood in Andhra Pradesh. They say it's a 10,000 year return period. 25 lakh cusecs of water, that is the kind of flood that we had. The death toll was below 100. More than 5,50,000 people are evacuated. On an hourly basis, we got inundation maps because of the modeling capability that the state has developed. That was passed on to the district administration. They were able to evacuate people. But at the same time, and then there's another effort that NDMA has been doing. We have the NDRF, the National Disaster Response Force.
We did a great job in Uttarakhand.
And elsewhere. More than 290,000 people have been saved in about 150 rescue operations over the past few years. But besides rescue and relief operations during a disaster, during a non-disaster period, they have been conducting community capacity building programs, making people aware of what they need to do, how they can save themselves. And I entirely agree with Mr. George. This is not enough. We need to do much more. Every citizen of this country should be exposed to the knowledge about disaster management and what needs to be done to save themselves. But again, also a reminder that we all know that Japan has been the most prepared country in this world. And they focus, every child knows what to do. But when the triple disasters happened, nature was so overwhelming that they had to suffer.
But recently the CAG report also came, which pointed out that many of the state governments have not constituted state development authorities or boards, and the fund is lying unutilized. So from that it appeared, Mr. George, that the governments are not serious about managing disasters. You work in the rural areas. Do you feel that people know what the disaster is? Can they cope with the disaster? Is there any sort of understanding of disaster in terms of what they may think of government scheme like Narega? Have they any sort of awareness on disasters that happen in?
You will agree with me that we are in a country which is a federal country. It's a huge country, big country. And everything cannot be done from New Delhi or from the union. It has to be from the states, and below the states, the districts, to the blocks and to the villages. So the whole question is really that kind of a decentralized governance, is it taking place? And if that kind of a decentralized governance is taking place, I feel that the consequence of these disasters can be substantially reduced. Every human life is precious, and good governance means protect the lives of the people. And from that point of view, I quote what Honorable Prime Minister had said when this Uttarakhand disaster happened. He said, I quote, "Our forecasting and early warning capabilities need to be strengthened and upgraded. Our communication system needs to be improved to ensure that disaster alerts or warnings reach the last person in the village," unquote. Really, how can that happen? What is the instrumentality we have for this to reach the last person in the village? That's the big question.
He has raised again that pertinent question that how that important aspect of disaster management reaches the last person in the village or the affected person in the village. But like we saw in Uttarakhand also, as soon as the disaster happened, the local staff was the first to leave their places, to run away, to be affected.
No, they perished.
Yeah, they perished. Many of them perished also, but the who survived were running for their own lives. But disaster also is not only people, it also affects the government machinery. So there is not a second level something which can replace the government machinery or help the government machinery in an immediate thing or in a very short duration of time. Like in case of Uttarakhand, it took about 10, 12 hours or 15 hours for NDRF to reach there, different paramilitary forces to reach there and start rescue. So after learning from Uttarakhand, are you working on some sort of a system in the state where there is a state disaster relief force which states were required to have more better equipped force in the state levels or in the district level, which can reach as a quick response team.
In Uttarakhand, the manner in which things happened, the weather there, people in Dehradun could not reach out. So we certainly need, states are now looking at establishing their own state disaster response force, will be more decentralized, they'll be more locally available. But that is one aspect, and I think what is required, in this country we have the institution of civil defense, and in the past, civil defense was geared up to deal with a warlike situation. We had a committee headed by one of our members, made a recommendation that it should become disaster managed centric. Earlier it was urban based kind of a setup. Then it was decided that it should be a district based setup, and the act was amended in 2009-10, and now disaster management comes center stage of civil defense. And certainly civil defense, it's not just a response force. The civil defense people of the society, of the community should be trained, should understand what they need to do at times of a disaster. Does a family have a disaster management plan? How they help themselves? And besides that, also we have to empower the community. I can quote one instance when 2 years back we were conducting mock exercises in the districts where the nuclear power plants are located in 6 different states. In Rajasthan, near the Rawatbhata nuclear power plant, I was interacting with an old man. He was about 80 years old. He said, "Sir, we know that you will come, the police will come, the officers will come, everybody will come, but it will take time. Why don't you teach us what we need to do?" And brings us back to community-based disaster management. That will be the real strength, because when something happens, like an earthquake or what happened in Uttarakhand, inaccessible roads, weather is bad, even helicopters can't go, so people can't reach things out there. So we need to develop capacities among the people, among the community, what they need to help themselves, what kind of reserves a village need to have in terms of hilly areas of the entire Himalayan range that we have. If we have a major earthquake, it can be a very serious situation. Lakhs of people are going to be affected. Uttarakhand is a very small thing when something, God forbid, like that happens. So we are looking at the lessons learned, and particularly in the context of the possibility of a large-scale disaster in the hill states.
This week, the IPCC report has come, and it has given different scenarios. But one scenario which is directly related to disaster is that extreme weather events will increase in the coming years. And if you see the past record also of the last 15-20 years, the monsoon-related flash floods have increased in the entire Himalayan range. So is NDMA or the government looking at some sort of a research? Because this aspect of climate has not been researched adequately in India. Most of the research is Western research. So is government looking at some sort of a research so that we can have early warning systems, some sort of a system where there can be an evacuation of people from the affected areas?
See, to have an effective early warning system, we need to do a lot of modeling. And the success of the modeling will depend on the kind of information that comes in through the observational network, the kind of information. It's not just the local cloud formation. This morning we had Dr. Sailesh Nayak, Secretary, Ministry of Earth Sciences. In his presentation, he was telling us of what the impact in Alaska could have had. That there's some kind of, up north in the poles, there's some kind of change there could impact the kind of patterns. So the ocean, air,
it is extremely complex.
Very complex. And then over the years, and particularly in the last 4 to 5 years, I think more and more information is flowing in. Our modeling is coming compared to international standards. We are doing very well. Our tsunami early warning is supposed to be better than some of the more well-established older
like disasters
centers.
Don't go by boundaries.
Yes.
And like Himalaya is spread in India as well in China, Nepal. So between different countries, any sort of cooperation between different countries or disaster management authorities of these countries has been done so that there can be some sort of exchange of information to help in preventing disasters or mitigating disasters.
I entirely agree with you. They have no boundaries. If we have heavy rainfall in Nepal, for which, we don't have the observational capabilities now. Bihar and eastern UP can be flooded in a very bad way.
Kosi flood was an
Kosi
example.
2008, what happened? A breach on the other side of the border. So we have to certainly look beyond. We have identified a grey area on the Indo-Nepal border and then wanted IMD to set up a Doppler weather radar there so that we can monitor Now, of course, all being SAARC countries, India and the surrounding countries are a part of SAARC, so there is scope for a lot of cooperation. In fact, as far as disaster response is concerned, there are requests from Sri Lanka, from Maldives and other countries, other SAARC countries. There are people to be trained in India for disaster response. I mean, we have achieved that kind of expertise and also name internationally. When our disaster response force went to Japan in 2011, they were rated probably the best, even though they are not certified internationally by the concerned UN organization. But still, we undergo the same kind of training and then we have performed better. So there is a lot of scope for this. And then there is another thing that acquiring aircrafts to study the cloud formation, cloud physics, this is something that has been done. It was only in the 1970s that we had an aircraft probing facility hired from US, which did some research. In the context of the latest IPCC report, some of the things that are forecast is that the monsoon period will extend. And India, everything depends on the monsoon. And our economy is totally dependent on that. Inflation goes up once the agriculture production comes down. So monsoon research is also a very critical area. We had the NDMA, while we developed the guidelines for management of cyclones in this country, we recommended for the establishment of a aircraft probing of cyclone facility. See, this aircraft will be able to go into the eye of the cyclone. I mean, that will be a very useful tool to reduce errors for cyclone forecasting. And then weather research can also be possible. So I think steadily we are moving ahead. But I personally feel that much more needs to be done, in the sense that, the traditional conservative thinking of incremental increases is not going to help. Now, in the context of Uttarakhand, this morning we discussed, and we've been discussing it for the last 3.5 months. What do we need to do to put in place a better observational and forecasting capability? The IMD, the Meteorological Department, has its own programs. There is a mountain meteorology program that they're undertaking. They have a regular modernization program. Then the CWC, the Central Water Commission, which is responsible for floods, and what kind of expansion they have. I personally feel that is not enough, because we need to do it faster.
I want to ask you one thing. Panchayats were supposed to become stronger through the 74th Amendment, but even after so many years, they haven't. So how can panchayats play an important role in disaster management, creating awareness, and in mitigation? There is a lot of limelight on the big disasters, but this country faces a large number of small disasters which may affect 1 village, 2 villages, 5 villages, 10 villages. And disasters in India claim more lives than terror attacks, than all crimes. And this aspect has, I think, been overseen, or it doesn't come into the policy purview so easily. So how can the panchayats play a proactive role in saving these precious lives?
The most important actor in this is the panchayats, that is the local government. This is the 73rd Constitutional Amendment has given powers to the local government. But unfortunately, all those powers are not at all given to these local governments. And we have men and women elected in this local government system. But are they educated? Are they empowered to handle these situations? That's why I again quote the Honorable Prime Minister. He said, I quote, "The capacities of our Panchayati Raj institutions and local communities, which are the first responders in any disaster situation, need to be enhanced further." This he said when this happened in Uttarakhand. And this is a mega project, and we have to invest a lot for that. Unfortunately, neither the state governments or others are taking priority for this kind of an issue.
What is the reason the state government are not interested?
No, elections will come, elections will go. This is our people. And this is our country.
No, I want to understand.
And therefore, what kind of a system we are building? We have to build institutions, you see. Once we have those institutions strong enough, then there is no problem. But unfortunately, these institutions are not strong. At the local level, at the higher level and at the higher level. All these very good possibilities which are mentioned earlier has to reach the grassroots level, households and the individual. And that is the real thing. And secondly, this whole issue of climate change. We can talk in New Delhi or in the capital cities or in the universities about the climate change and all that. Do the people know about it? And the only instrumentality for this is the local government and the panchayats, and panchayats have to be saved. And I still remember scholar James Manner writing, the panchayats will give the early warning of any disaster which is happening, and they know the situation, they know the local condition, the traditional knowledge they have.
I'll just supplement to what Mr. George has said. I think giving more powers to the local bodies, these are all major issues. We try to react only when something happens. We need to look at preparedness, we need to look at mitigation, and this is something that we need to be focusing on. People, the way people start thinking, the political leadership starts thinking, the administrative hierarchy starts thinking, and I think that is a key factor. And then when you look at what our NDRF has been doing in this community capacity building program, they have so far sensitized about 35 lakh people all over the country. And then we encourage people to work out their village plan. What is a village disaster management plan? When something happens, what is the escape route? How do they go? Which way is higher, safer, and things like that. So I think essentially when we talk of a national plan, state plan, district plan, each village, each unit, habitation should have its own. Moreover, not only that, it should come down to a family level. A family should have its own disaster management
like
plan.
in the Panchayati Raj institution, every district should have a plan, annual plan for different government schemes.
Absolutely.
So disaster management can be a component of...
No, I mean it has to be there, and then every development activity, disaster risk reduction has to be factored in.
But in many states or many districts, district plan, which is part of the Constitution of India, is not at all implemented. It is not taken seriously. The plan is coming not from below, plan is coming from above. But another point I would like to mention here is that many of these disasters, its consequences or its dimension could have been reduced if we were eco-friendly. We were not eco-friendly, and what should be done in a mountainous area? But because we have a profit motive...
I just like to also mention one of the things that NDMA has done. You know, how people need to be empowered with knowledge. Simple things. Many districts, there are about 60 districts in this country, in 5 states, which have incidents of Japanese encephalitis and encephalitis
mostly
acute
UP,
encephalitis. And in most of them are in UP, and in UP, in the eastern UP. When we looked at it, NDMA developed a program. We call it the Social Mobilization Program. Har Parivar Lade Aapda Se. You know, we look to the government, what hospitals need to be built, what infrastructure needs to be established. Then I said, why not teach people what they need to do? We took up this campaign. It consisted of master training of master trainers, about 4,000 of them, at the medical officers at the district level. They in turn trained the community health workers, the ASHA, Anganwadi, ANMs and all that, who are at the grassroots level, who have a reach to every household. And 4,000 master trainers trained about 1 lakh community health workers, and they reached out to about 1 crore households with a simple message of simple do's and don'ts. And I'm very happy Government of Uttar Pradesh has recognized it. The incidence of these diseases has decreased, and any decrease when the general trend is going up, I think is very significant.
I want to come on the important issue of man-made disasters.
Yes.
Huge amount of population is migrating to urban areas, and 70 to 80% of new upcoming towns are totally unplanned in India, as per the census data also. And in coming years, it will be a huge danger. This sort of man-made disasters will be a huge problem in the coming years. So how does NDMA...
We talk about all possible, the disaster management plan at the local level should look at all possible things. And if buildings are collapsing, the local bodies have to act. They have to understand. They have to look at unsafe buildings. How are things happening? And then who's constructing them? It's the people who are constructing. If people in an earthquake-prone area do not realize that it is bad buildings that will kill them, and they have to build safe buildings, they have to understand that and do that. And then people in urban areas, that there is a lot of pressure for land, a lot of illegal construction is happening. This is something that I think massive public awareness is something that needs to be taken up, coupled with actions by the local authorities, and trying to, irrespective of the powers that Mr. George has been talking about, the local authorities, it is well within their powers to stop any illegal construction. But now we have two things that are, one that has already come, that is the real estate bill. Cabinet has approved, it will get enacted. Then there is also an engineers bill where you will fix accountability on engineers.
Mr. Matthew, I would like to ask whether in cities like in Delhi, Bombay, and the problem they are posing for disaster, what are the steps do you think should be taken? Shouldn't be disaster proofing part of the building bylaw in the cities? And how the people can be trained?
See, the most important and the critical issue is, as we have already mentioned, is the empowerment of the local bodies or local governments. And in municipalities, we have...
No, Mr. George, the local bodies are already empowered to implement. Things are well within them. They overlook. They tend to overlook.
Let me ask a question. How many Ward Sabhas are meeting in New Delhi? Ward Sabha is part of the Municipal Act in 74th Constitutional Amendment. How many Gram Sabhas are meeting and their records are really looked. The people's wisdom at the local level is the highest than anybody else's wisdom about the locality. And when they say that this will collapse, this will happen, no, that is not taken care of because there are other priorities. Therefore, empowerment of the Ward Sabhas and the Gram Sabhas is a priority. Are we really doing it? And then the disaster happen and then we find them.
Mr. Matthew, this is an extremely interesting topic, important also.
Isn't it?
But we are at the paucity of time. In conclusion, I want to ask a simple question. Do you think there is a need to strengthen the NDMA Act and have similar laws in the states also?
What we have is enough. I don't really see. Somebody asked me, do you need more teeth? I said, no, there are agencies with a lot of teeth. The Ministry of Environment has so many teeth. But then environment laws are being, I don't want to say more about what's happening in several places. So it's the will to think right, think in the right manner, understand the situation properly, awareness generation. There are a lot of these things that can be done. And then it's not just NDMA, it is recently Uttarakhand, everything NDMA was found responsible. I said it is what happened in Tehri or in Uttarakashi, what is NDMA doing about it? There is a district administration below that, the state administration above that. There are all these actors, stakeholders who have to play their role well.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy and Mr. Matthews. It was a delight talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are listening to a discussion on NDMA's role in disaster mitigation. The participants were M. Sasidhar Reddy, Vice Chairman, National Disaster Management Authority, George Matthew, Chairman, Institute of Social Sciences, and Chetan Chauhan, Associate Editor, Hindustan Times, who initiated and moderated the discussion. It came to you in the program Current Affairs, produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, news.air.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.